Things must make sense. Using this as their central tenet, Oris is only one of a small number of Swiss watchmakers that continue to craft a full mechanical catalog. Since 1904, they've certainly experienced a fair share of instability, but they've grown into one of the largest, fully independent Swiss watchmaking houses in existence. This caught the attention of ASOG, later becoming the Swatch Group, who acquired Oris in 1969. But despite their success, timing could not have been worse, as it coincided with the quartz crisis that saw many Swiss watchmakers to their eventual end. During the 1970s and early 1980s, Oris's staff dropped from over 900 to just a few dozen, and it was in serious jeopardy of going under. It wasn't until a passionate group of upper management pulled together to buy back the brand from its parent company in 1982 that Oris breathed new life. Since then, their independence has fueled the watchmaker's popularity in the 21st century. One particular watch has been around through thick and thin, the Oris Big Crown. The latest iteration, the Big Crown ProPilot Big Date, shows off their motto with high legibility, precise machining, and beautiful finishes. Everything just makes sense with absolutely nothing extraneous. The Big Crown was first introduced in 1938, just before World War II, to aid pilots who wore thick leather gloves at altitude to combat the decrease in temperature. What we have today is largely streamlined, but as the name suggests, the watch had a chunky, oversized crown for better grip and the design largely stuck. So let's take a closer look at its modern form. The Big Crown ProPilot Big Date is one of the most quintessential modern pilot watches made today. Take a look at the precise machining, the case cadence between the turbine-style bezel, screw-down crown and case back, the dome sapphire crystal, and heaps of dial legibility. What does it mean to be independent, and why is this important in the context of Oris and the Big Crown ProPilot Big Date? Take any other industry, fashion, automotive, etc. The bigger a company gets, the more people are involved and the more processes are automated. And often, not always, but often, this moves companies further and further away from their initial vision as leadership also expands or changes. Luckily, after Oris became independent for the second time, we saw a resurgence and a fresh design language that would eventually lead to the revamped Big Crown, first introduced at the cusp of the Second Great War. Let's begin with taking a closer look at the case. Dimensionally, the Oris Big Crown ProPilot Big Date uses a 41mm stainless steel case, a 12.1mm thickness, and a 48mm lug-to-lug. On the wrist, it certainly has substantial presence, and this is mainly due to the large dial that pushes right to the edge of the thin coin-edge bezel. The case itself is relatively simple, but what's there is so well executed. Oftentimes, simplicity can be harder to pull off as there's absolutely nothing to hide behind. Look at the execution of the coin-edge bezel, the vertical brushing that runs along the side of the case and into the lugs, the similar coin-edge texture on the Big Crown, and on the 180 you'll find this finish applied to the exhibition case back bezel as well. You'll see this execution and attention to detail throughout the entire ProPilot catalog, like the colorful and lightweight titanium ProPilot X series, which we've covered in a previous guide. The case shape is quite stark and simple, with a very standard set of lugs that gently slope toward the bracelet. A quick look at the side profile reveals its stripped-down approach, and interestingly enough, the bezel looks as if it's separate from the main case. As in, there's a clear line or seam as if it's sitting on top of the case and not integrated with the case, but you'd be mistaken that the bezel moves as this unit is fixed, unlike the freely spun unit we saw recently on the Coulson Limited Edition. A big part of the Big Crown ProPilot Big Date's presence is the expansive dial, but what sits in front of it is a large double-domed anti-reflective sapphire crystal, and unfortunately this was one of our only critiques. Oris claims the sapphire has anti-reflective coating applied to the inside of the glass to prevent it from getting scratched over time, but its anti-reflective properties are just not great, especially in the sun. We're not sure if it just needs a thicker coating on the interior portion of the crystal or even just coating on both sides of the glass, but we'd like to see it pick up less reflection in any regard. If we're talking pilot watches and pilot watches only, IWC certainly takes the cake for an uber clear viewing experience, like the Mark XX for example. So it's certainly achievable, although expect to pay around $3,000 more than the Big Crown ProPilot. The dial is quintessentially pilot watch. It's oversized, uber simple, and highly legible thanks to the value contrast between the dark dial background and the bright raised Arabic numerals. The Cartier Santos was technically the first pilot watch built for the application. Back then, there was quite obviously a lack of handy, or rather hands-free, autopilot features, and as such a pilot had to keep both hands squarely on the controls throughout the flight. Well, Louis Cartier listened to his aviator friend Alberto Santos Dumont, who explained the predicament after one of his first successful flights, and designed a watch purpose-built for the task. With a very small case size and Roman numerals, the form was very different from what we're seeing from the market today, but the high contrast was still there, and so was a knurled crown. Over the last century, the form evolved, as have the demands of modern aviation. Thanks to the Swiss-based watchmakers IWC, Longines, and Breitling to name a few, pilot watches have kept pace. Today's Big Crown ProPilot Big Date sees an almost edge-to-edge dial presentation, whose stark simplicity harkens back to their original Pilot Watch offerings from the late 1930s. And of course, we need to touch on what's specifically in the name, the Big Date at the 3 o'clock. The aperture shares the same bold black and white color scheme as the dial, so it presents very uniformly as a result, but the digits don't quite reach the same size as the hour markers. It's worth noting that the Big Crown ProPilot comes in a few different date variations. Ours, the most classic, is a date only, while there are a few 41mm with different dial finishes that use the day-date format, also taking the place of the 3. In terms of utility, the lume applied to the Arabic numerals and inset within the hands glows a brilliant aqua blue, and stays that way for quite some time, which is extremely useful if an actual pilot was looking to pick this up for some night flights. Any review wouldn't be a true review without a bit of critique, and although the Big Crown ProPilot Big Date is one of our favorite pilot watches around the $2,000 price point, we do have a few thoughts about the second stand in particular. On this specific black dial variant, if you look closely at the hand, it's rendered in all black except for a thin red tip. It's an extremely nice accent color, and it adds interest to an overwhelmingly monochrome presentation, but its legibility is not all that great. The red hue is far too dull against the large bright white numerals to catch anything at a quick glance. Like we said, the gripe is minor, but we've all seen white tip Big Crown ProPilots from Oris in the past, so if you're looking for ultimate legibility, there are a few floating around on the secondary market. The second tenet to a great pilot watch is accuracy, which should go for all watches you'd think, but for a pilot watch, a field watch, or even a diver, timing discrepancies could, in extreme cases, mean life or death, if you're going to be using it as a purpose-built tool as they were created for originally. Despite incredible good looks, Oris takes the accuracy factor seriously by packing in the automatic Oris 751, that employs a Sellita SW220-1 as a base and their own proprietary Big Date complication. The Big Crown ProPilot sees Oris' signature bright red rotor in play, keeping the 38-hour power reserve topped off as seen through the bright mineral glass exhibition window. The rotor also sports some very attractive smiling text situated above the vertical brushing. The power reserve is a modest 41 hours, so you can expect just under 2 full days on a wind. Nothing record-breaking for sure, but the timing is highly accurate with a 4Hz beat rate aided by 26 joules. Keep in mind Oris offers the similarly aviation-inspired limited edition Coulson with a staggering 120 hours of power reserve. That's 3 times the power reserve of the Big Date ProPilot. But what you gain in convenience, you lose on price. Expect to pay about 2.5 times as much as this one for that limited edition run. Using a modified Sellita also bakes in some future-proofing. You can rest easy knowing they're easily serviceable despite the modifications if anything goes awry. The Oris Big Crown ProPilot Big Date comes with a few different strap and bracelet options. For $2,100, you're given a very straightforward but stealthy 3-row stainless steel bracelet and a snap closure with a notably aviation-themed lift clasp to secure or disengage the assembly. Extra points could have been shelled out had Oris built in a clasp system with micro adjustments. As you can tell, there are none, and the full-size links make fine-tuning a bit challenging. Hopefully this is something they can give attention to, but as is the case with many watchmakers now, they offer a few other in-house options to accommodate the standard 20mm lug width. Leather, textile, rubber, and some even sport the same lift clasp if you're inclined toward the buckle but don't like the lack of adjustment features on the stainless unit. So at the end of the day, does the Big Crown ProPilot make sense for you? If one thing is certain, after getting hands-on with the Big Crown ProPilot Big Date, it makes sense why the watch has seen so much success for Oris. They've tapped into their heritage while still packing in heaps of modern looks and features into an oversized, highly legible pilot watch with really unique machining and superior finishes, all at the $2,000 price tier. If you've been looking for a sharp, everyday capable pilot watch that has plenty of character from the coin edge bezel to the oversized retro crown, look here. If you've been looking for a pilot watch over 40mm but still want a minimalist dial character, look here. If you've been looking for a pilot watch with an easily serviceable and highly accurate movement, look here. We could go on, but if you stayed with us this far, you get the gist. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the Oris Big Crown ProPilot Big Date.